Welcome to Honest Car Reviews, and say hi to the updated Ford Kuga Plug-in Hybrid. Not surprisingly, but I reviewed the previous generation Ford Kuga a couple of years ago, and surprisingly it blew up. Who could have thought that people wanted to buy a sensibly priced plug-in hybrid? Well, I was not one of them, because I gave the previous generation Ford Kuga quite a lot of flack, but I ignored the main thing about the car, and that was the price. It is a very competitive price that gives you a plug-in hybrid with a lot of interior spaces. And this is the updated Ford Kuga, meaning you have a brand new exterior, a lot of updates to the interior, and some minor tweaks to the plug-in hybrid system. And in this review I'm going to explain and tell you all about those updates. And here we are in the engine bay, and here we have quite an interesting petrol engine, actually a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder non-turbocharged engine. Nothing is really changed here, reliable. They know that it works. And here we have some orange wires, which means that I need to talk about the hybrid part of this power plant. 14 kilowatt hour of battery power, and the total power output is 240 horsepower. 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, if you actually need to know, is about 7 seconds, which is an improvement compared to the previous Kuga of about 2 seconds. But that is basically all you need to know, because range and all of that we'll talk about later. And with the new Kuga you get a new trim level, and it's the Active, which is supposed to make it more rugged, more plastic, increased ride height on the front and the rear as well. And that brings it nicely to the exterior, which we'll talk about now. Ford is also following the trend with horizontal light bars, and of course a lot of LEDs. The exterior though, I like it a lot. Much more rugged, much more aggressive, but also much more mature. Definitely a step forward in the right direction. And also look at this green paint. I really like it. Maybe it has some metallic, maybe not, but it looks absolutely incredible. Just a whole home run. And with the Active you of course have some unique rims, a lot of sidewall, which I always like to give that better ride. If you follow here to the side, I almost missed the charging outlet. 3.4 or around 3 kilowatt charging speed. Interesting detail. And here we have of course the Active details with the plastic cover panel here. But here you have the petrol cap, and to open that one you have to actually go inside to open it. Unique detail. But if you go to the last part, and that is of course the rear, and that is the same with the previous Kuga, and that is this extruding lower part. This is basically just plastic, and I actually think I know why they have it, and that is just for safety, because behind here there's a crash structure, so they needed to cover that stuff up with all of this extruding plastic. Double shark fin antenna, and there's a bit of play in it. You can even see some water underneath it, and that is definitely not good when it gets colder and freezing temperatures. Here we have the rear view camera, and what is new with the new Kuga is the 360-degree camera system. So we found cameras around the car. And while we're at the rear, I can show you the real exhaust tips. Yeah, they are real. And why am I commenting that? And that is because many exhaust tips are not real, but these are. Let's talk cargo space. And while the rear door is opening, you can see that the entrance is quite narrow, but 530 liters around that of cargo space. This incredibly flimsy or tacky view cover, which you can luckily remove quite easily. And let's do like that. Underneath here you have nothing, no spare tire, a tire reparation kit, and that is basically all. One good thing with the rear compartment is that you can actually load above the view cover here. The angle here is not that aggressive. And here you have the flaps to fold down the rear seats, both on the left side and on the right side. And let's jump in the rear seats. And let's adjust the... Yeah, all right. So, a lot of foot space, and I mean a lot of foot space. I even have some lower thigh support, but sitting in the middle you can already see that it won't be that comfortable because it's raised. You do have an armrest and 2 cup holders. Very dark, some fake suede Alcantara style here, but on the roof here is actually dark. So they've worked a little bit with the materials, even though a lot of plastic. You do have some different materials to work with here. Not the best quality, but you do have heated seats, which is always nice here in Sweden when it gets really cold. Continuing with the interior, I need to talk about the side door here, and we'll start from the top to the bottom. It's very cheap, the plastic. Here you have a speaker cover that is also plastic, some brushed something look, actual buttons for the window here, some leather, if it's actual leather I have no idea, some contrasting stitching, it is white here, and a very shallow door bin because it's actually taken up by the speaker. This is a regular 33 centiliter bottle, and that is basically what will fit in the side bin here. But the person that will buy this car will of course sit in the driver's seat, and that is what I will talk about now. And speaking of the driver's seat, electrically adjustable in basically every single way. I sit very comfortable in here. Not that much side support, but this is not a sporty car, it's a SUV or compact SUV, so I'll take it for what it is. If I start the car up, you hear that engine roar to life, but since it is a hybrid, it can sometimes start in pure electric, so everything will be quiet. You have the gear shift selector, park, reverse, neutral and drive, and you twist it to go in the different modes. Everything regarding the interior, or almost everything regarding interior, is the previous generation Kuga, but you have a new infotainment screen and a new infotainment system with a digital gauge cluster. The infotainment screen or the system is quite slow at responding, especially when going into the different driving settings. The animation is extremely slow for some reason. Button on the steering wheel works flawlessly, as they have always done in the Ford Kuga and other Ford models. So nothing to complain about there. But it's starting to get quite old, and especially for the price of about 550,000 Swedish kroner or around 50,000 euros, you're starting to make some questions on the price versus quality. Alright, so we are driving the new Ford Kuga. The steering and the driving part in general, this is not a sporty car, it's not trying to be, which means that the steering doesn't give that much feedback. The suspension is quite soft, and that is all fine and dandy, because what I said before is not trying to be sporty, it's trying to do everything. If you want to fit 5 people, it should do that. If you want to drive 60 kilometers in pure electric range, it should do that. And it should be quiet, it should be comfortable. And it does all of those things really well. There's nothing major for me to complain about with the new Kuga. And that was the same with the previous version? Well, it's not as luxurious or as sporty as the competitors, but I don't think it's trying to do that either, especially at the price point that is significantly lower than the competitors, such as the Volvo XC60 and the BMW X3. This car has the active trim level, which gives you a lot of tech upgrades, but also a lot of safety updates or safety upgrades. So you have the active cruise control, lane assist, collision warning, lane switching assist, and a lot of those safety features. And basically all of them work without any major complaints. Well, the cruise control is quite aggressive to keep you within the lines, and sometimes it can lose sight of those lines even though they are quite clear. One thing I have thought about a lot is the exterior versus the interior. The exterior is basically all new, but the interior has been mostly left unchanged, apart from the infotainment system and the digital gauge cluster. And the interior and the exterior doesn't really match. The exterior looks more upscale, but the interior, with all of the amount of plastic that you find here, it is a plug-in hybrid. It offers a lot of value for the money, but since you're paying over 50,000 euro for this spec, this interior is starting to look quite cheap in that price category. What are my final conclusions for the new Ford Kuga? Well, if you are buying a Kuga for the first time, the new Ford Kuga is an excellent choice. But if you already have the previous generation Kuga, well, I don't think this is enough of an upgrade, especially considering the hybrid system compared to the previous Kuga. But the exterior updated in basically every way. The interior is now in the 21st century with the new infotainment system and the digital gauge cluster. And the new Ford Kuga is an attractive car with a really good price point. And that is my final conclusion for the new Ford Kuga.